welcome back to another episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, where we speak the truths that are often left unspoken. And today we are going straight into the fire with courage, clarity, and wisdom. So, dear listeners, if you have ever felt trapped in a legal battle with someone who weaponizes the system, like gaslighting, manipulating, financially draining you, so you are not alone. And more importantly, you can survive it, right? So today's guest is, please welcome Lisa Johnson. So welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, before we delve deep into the discussion, so it's a great discussion, dear listeners. But before we delve deep into this, I'll quickly love to introduce you to Lisa. So, dear listeners, Lisa is the co-founder of Been There, Got Out, and a woman who has turned pain into precedent. So, she's a certified domestic violence advocate and high conflict divorce strategist. So she represented herself in a court scores of times. Yes, scores. And her legal case is now cited in law journals as precedent. That's unheard of. Yeah. But perhaps even more powerful, like her life testimony helped pass Jennifer's Law in Connecticut, expanding the definition of domestic violence to include the coercive control. Like uh, Lisa and her partner Chris now coach people through the high conflict relationships and the legal battles, and offering tools, support, and hope. And today we are talking about surviving the legal abuse and thriving beyond it. So, why to it? Let's get started. Welcome to the show again.
Thanks. I'm excited.
Amazing. So, Lisa, like I definitely want to start like where most people are stuck in the courtroom, terrified and silenced. So, what does this very popular legal abuse actually look like? Why it's so hard for people to recognize it, like while it's happening?
Well, so I think we have a vision of what normal divorce looks like, and legal abuse doesn't fit it.
Mm,
And so when people are dealing with legal abuse, which we said it's basically someone weaponizing the legal system to wear the other person down and bleed them dry financially, it doesn't align with normal divorce where both people are angry for a little while, they fight, and then the anger settles down. They realize that they should do what's best for the kids, stop
mhm,
bleeding money, and move on with their lives. So, legal abuse in our community is the opposite. Our clients' exes want to stay engaged as long as possible. Since they don't have the day to day interaction with their former partner because they don't live together anymore most of the time, they're limited to three ways to still get to them: money,
mm,
kids, and the court. And especially in America, divorce is a huge money-making industry. And so
mhm.
the longer you stay in the legal system, the
Yeah.
the harder it is. It's more of a punishment. And so legal abuse, I can get into more detail later of exactly the types of things that it is, but it's basically the opposite of normal. Our clients' exes don't want to move on. They wanna stay, and they often have what we call a clinging kind of hate. They don't wanna let you go because they wanna just destroy you.
Mm. Exactly. I totally understand. And like, when did you realize that what you were experiencing wasn't just a messy divorce, like, but something far more inside you?
Yeah, so in my case, it took a year and about $100,000 just to get out of the marriage, but I was in court for 10 years. So the year I didn't I had no first of all, I had no idea what legal abuse was till I was deep into it, years into it. But when
Yeah.
I was married for nearly 18 years and never even expected to get a divorce. But
Mhm.
that's a whole other story. And at some point it became more painful to stay than to go. And so I met with a divorce attorney, and within 20 minutes, he said, yours is going to be one of the really bad ones. And it's going to take,
Mm.
in Connecticut, my state, You can do divorce your own way, where it's like $500 and you both agree and you fill out some papers and then it's done. Or the maximum is a year, because in Connecticut, the court wants you to try and work on things, but if a year passes and you still haven't mediated or negotiated something, then they set a trial date. So this lawyer knew immediately that mine was going to go to trial, and
Mhm.
he was right in terms of that it took a year, 2 weeks short of that trial date. We finally settled. But I still didn't think of it as legal abuse, because I thought, okay, well, a year is what I expected. Only when I went back, what's called post judgment, so after the
Yeah.
divorce, my lawyer had said, "Your ex is not going to comply with these orders, and so it's
Mhm.
gonna be on you, Lisa, because you can't afford me anymore, and he's just gonna financially bleed you dry again. You're gonna have to do it yourself." And so he kinda lined me up for it. But then
Okay.
I never thought it would be a 10-year,
Mm.
10 chunk of my life. And so, going to court over and over, and judges who, like, would look at orders and say, "Well, we need to delay things, and it takes 4 months to make an order." As the years started passing, I was like, "Something is wrong. Like, this is not
Yeah.
like anyone else's situation that I've heard of." And then a few years ago, maybe about 4 a little over 4 years ago, I stumbled onto an article that talked
Mhm.
about something called legal abuse. I thought, "Oh my gosh, this is my life." I'd never heard of it before. And so,
Mhm.
at that time, Chris and I, my partner, had started Been There, Got Out, and I'm a writer
Mhm.
by nature. My background was also as a high school English teacher, and so I started putting out content on our social media explaining what legal abuse was. It has a variety of names, and now I think a lot, not that we take credit for it, but a lot more people have understand what it is and are writing about it and talking about it, because it is pretty common in America alone. They say about like seven-ish, sorry, 80,000 people suffer from it.
Mhm.
So it's a small amount, but it's a large number of people.
Got it. Got it. Understood. And okay, so like you represented yourself through dozens of court appearances, and like you mentioned, and that alone is astonishing. I mean, so um, I mean, what gave you the courage to do that? I mean, how can others begin to advocate for themselves and like when everything feels stacked against them?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I have
Mm.
to say that at least in our part of the world, because divorce and post-judgment issues are so expensive, that 3 out of 4 people are pro se or self-represented litigants like me. So, like I said, my lawyer said to me, "You are gonna have to do it yourself." And so I didn't really have a choice, because that $100,000, I'm still paying back that divorce loan, and I feel like I will be probably for the rest of my life. And so, realizing that I didn't have a choice, I thought, "Okay, what can I do? What resources can I use to support me?" So whenever someone is going through divorce, Chris and I advise them, you need to have a lawyer for that part. You should not do that yourself, because that's the foundation of your case. So you really need a professional who understands the law, who understands the nature of what you're dealing with,
Mm.
to sort of set that foundation. And then once you have orders or some kind of agreement, it's much
Mm.
easier to go pro se, at least legally. There's the whole emotional part that's a lot more difficult. But
Mhm.
it makes it like there's already the law that you're following by having those orders, or or the agreement. And so it's a lesser scope than doing an entire divorce. So, but going pro se is a really big deal, and it's it's not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah, got it. Understood. Yeah. So, uh, okay, and like, okay, so like, what mindset shift helped you go from this overwhelmed to the empowered in the courtroom?
So my background, like I said, was as a high school English teacher. I was really shy as a child, and teaching a bunch of teenagers was the thing I probably was the most frightening nightmare I could imagine, but I ended up doing it anyway. And so having this attitude of like, I'm going to use my skills in the classroom, of almost being an actor, where you think, I have to do this. I have to perform. And also, I drew upon a lot of persuasive techniques, things that I had taught my students in terms of persuasive writing and persuasive communication. And so that really took a lot of preparation before going into court. That's what everything takes. Everything is preparation. And so I would write out what I wanted to talk about. And then my father actually is an identical twin, and he and my uncle are patent attorneys. So they deal with intellectual property. He knows nothing about family law, but I like to say that he speaks legalese, and he's never litigated and he never would, but he understands, he's really good with understanding human nature and the what's called decorum of the legal system, and how you always have to be extremely respectful. You have to understand your role in that courtroom, and the judge is like the top. I don't know if you know the Wizard of Oz movie, but we often think of it as the judge is the wizard, like they're in control of everything, and you're Dorothy, so you're basically begging for something. So to always remember that, and to ask very politely, and to stay extremely focused on what you're asking for and why you are entitled to it. So having my dad in the background, and my partner Chris to talk to, and just my own writing and communication background, I did a lot of practicing. I did a lot of role playing before each time I'd go into court, but it was still really scary because you never know which direction a judge is going to take. You never know exactly what opposing counsel, meaning the other side's attorney, is going to do. So you have to learn to pivot quickly and think on your feet. And I think just being used to so much chaos in my life and in my career, I was like, I can do it. And so I did it. Not to say it was easy, and I'm definitely smiling a lot more now that it's over, than when I was going through, because it's so, so frustrating, and it felt
Yeah,
really, really unfair during the time.
understood. Yeah. And that's incredibly inspiring because the system often assumes that self-represented litigants are the disadvantaged. Like, but you have shown that the right tools and tenacity, justice is definitely possible. So yeah, that's a good pyramid. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, though, like teaching, that's one thing we work with a lot of our clients on. We don't give legal advice, but we could teach the art of persuasion. And so, and efficiency. And we often compare being in court. We say it's like you're paying $7 million for a 30-second Super Bowl commercial. That's American football. And so, you really need to understand that the court doesn't have time to hear your story. They don't feel sorry for you. You're not going to get validation. They want you in and out of there as fast as possible. So you need to be laser focused again on what you're asking for and why you're entitled to it based on the timeline of your case and case law. So putting aside the fact that a judge is going to be like in the movies, and punishment is going to rain down on your abusive ex, that never happened. Maybe little drips of it in places,
Okay.
but it's like a business. It's a business. Like you go in and you have to
Yeah.
figure out what has to be done, and then you're done. But a lot of times, because family court, especially here where we have adversarial law, where it's like a big fight, and we lack civility, unfortunately, in our courtrooms as well as our society at this point. It's very emotional. So when it's your life, you care more than anyone about it, because it's you and your kids and your family. And being pro se, one of the hardest things to do is to separate that emotion, because opposing counsel, your ex's attorney, they don't care about your family, they care about their own family. So you just have to sort of armor up. And that's a lot of what Chris and I teach, is basically, instead of just being terrified, to think this is how it's going to be. Opposing counsel is probably going to bully you and make you feel like you're a terrible person and a horrible parent, but to be ready for that, and to figure out how to properly present in the courtroom to a judge or outside of court in mediation, negotiation, to custody evaluators, etc. But getting those emotions in check is one of the hardest things for anyone to do, and I certainly am guilty of
Mm,
showing my emotions at time in the courtroom.
exactly. Wow. So like you and Chris run this support groups and coach others, like you mentioned. Uh, So, what are some of the most common mistakes like people make when facing a narcissistic or maybe the abusive ex in the court?
So the biggest mistake is they think that the court is going to give justice and that it's going to be the way that they see it from their perspective. So a lot of times when we're in a relationship with someone who's abusive, we think, well, okay, they're a terrible person. And the judge is going to think because of how poorly they treated me, they're going to see how poorly they're going to treat our children. And so they're going to give me all the custody of the kids and I can just go and live my life and cut that person out. That is not how court and the world see families. Generally, courts around the world believe that a child has a right to have a relationship with both parents. That's very hard for victims of domestic violence because they are suffering, and a lot of them have not dealt with all kinds of emotional abuse, but physical abuse too, and they really fear for their children's safety. And so the big mistake is thinking like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to tell the judge what happened, and then I'm going to get my way. They're going to see it from my perspective. And that's not usually the case because there are two people and often aggressive people hire aggressive attorneys. And there's lots of, in our culture, lots of lies and false allegations, which distract from the big issues. So it ends up being like a free for all. We call it the Wild West. So that's one of the mistakes people make is they think it's going to be calm and they're going to have as much time in the world and a judge is going to listen and do the right thing, but they don't understand that there's certain laws that judges have to follow. And once you know what that is, then there's ways to learn how to operate more effectively in the system, whether you have a lawyer or not.
Mm, true. Exactly. So, like your upcoming program, like from fear to fears in the family code, it really sounds like a lifeline. So, can you tell us what this programs offers and how you hope it changes lives?
Yeah, so I'm super excited about From Fear to Fierce in Family Court. We teach certain things, we call them pillars, like certain things we teach over and over and over to our coaching clients one to one. And so we figured we we have to start
Mm,
saving time because we run out of hours in the day. So we started putting together a series of online courses based on the things that we teach the most. So one thing we do more than anything with all of our clients is something we call strategic communication. And that's where you are communicating with your ex in writing only, but you're conscious of that everything you say is going to be seen by this invisible audience at some point,
mm,
whether it's a judge, an evaluator, a mediator, your child's therapist, whatever. And so you really have to present as the best co-parent ever. But at the same time, you want to be documenting your ex's patterns of behavior over
mm,
time, the impact it has on your children, as well as on your relationship with your children. So this strategic communication is like it's an art form and it takes a lot of time and practice to learn. So the first course that we have in From Fear to Fierce in Family Court is called it's on strategic communication. It's called How to Communicate with Your Ex Without Destroying Your Case or Losing Your Mind.
mm,
So we basically have packed about 4.5 hours of lessons and activities and things that people can do in little chunks on their own time. So they really have a deep understanding and don't have to pay us as much money as they would for us to
mm,
go through it with them, even though everyone still wants things customized. The next one that we're working on has to do with writing an airtight parenting plan. And parenting plan is if you have children and you share custody, which most people do, with your ex, it's your constitution. It's not
mm,
just about the schedule, but it's about how you make decisions about education, health, extracurriculars, religion. There's a lot of things involved, and with the schedule, not just the day to day, but how do holidays work, how do vacations work. So it's a really big deal. And a lot of times, lawyers don't think about the high conflict cases where they'll put words in there like, "Oh, reasonable this," and the parties will work things out. But in our community, that doesn't happen because our clients are dealing with someone who's irrational, and they will always weaponize that parenting schedule. So it's really important for it to be done extremely well with enforcement language, deadlines,
mm.
consequences, thinking about a much broader range of things than you would get from a lawyer. And every time people think they're going to go to court and a judge is just going to give them a schedule, They literally have a notebook of
Mm.
different templates, and they're never really detailed. So when you have something like that and your ex is high conflict, you're back in court in our country all the time to clarify some of the language in the parenting plan because you're not going to see it the
Mm.
same way your ex does. So that's our next course, and there's going to be a few others as well.
Perfect. Perfect. Lovely. Great. So, also, like, if someone's listening right now feeling hopeless or paralyzed, what would you say is the very first step they should take to begin fighting back?
So the first thing to understand is that,
Mm.
well, first of all, many people in abusive relationships don't even realize that it is an abusive relationship because they think of abuse as physical most of the time and they don't understand emotional or psychological or verbal. And when you're with someone for a while, it becomes familiar and it becomes normal.
Mm.
And so it's important to understand that you need to start educating yourself. In our country and other countries, there's places called domestic violence centers where you can call to get information and understand your rights, and they're usually nonprofit and free.
Mm.
Or, I mean, there's so much content out there on the internet and on social media to start following accounts that like lawyers in your area might do content about that, or listening to podcasts. We have a whole podcast called Been There Got Out, where we've interviewed attorneys and mental health professionals and trauma therapists. And so to really start learning what exactly is going on so that you realize, oh, that's my situation. Actually, I thought of something. We actually have a toxic relationship quiz that's free on our website that has 33 questions that you can take if you're not sure if your relationship is unhealthy. And if you see that it is, then it's time to start learning about the nature of domestic violence and coercive control. And then the next step is understanding your rights. Because if you just talk to your partner about what's going to happen and they're abusive, they're not going to tell you the truth about what your rights are. They're basically going to make you feel like you're entitled to nothing. And so really knowing what reality is, because often these relationships are reality has become distorted. So starting to reach out to others who are experts and can tell you the truth rather than the person that's been dominating your life and you might not even realize it. So it starts with empowerment through education.
I agree. I totally agree on this. Definitely. Wow. I mean, that's exactly what so many need. I mean, not just the information, but transformation, because healing is not just about surviving the code, but it's all about reclaiming your life after code too. Yeah,
Yeah, during, and after, because for our cases, I mean, mine was 10 years. I had to start reclaiming flame. I couldn't wait 10 years.
exactly. Exactly. Lovely. So, Lisa, thank you so much, not just for the work you do, but for who you are. I mean, you have showed us that justice is not just an idea, it's a process, and it begins with the decision to stop being silent. So,
Mhm.
to all the listeners, like if you are in the midst of legal abuse, a custody battle, or feel trapped in a high conflict situation, you are not crazy, you are not weak, and you are most definitely not alone. So there's a path through the chaos. There are people who have walked it before you, and as Lisa's story shows us, you can not only survive but change the system in the process. So, Lisa, if someone wants to connect with you, what will be the best medium?
Super easy. So we are been there, got out. We have a pretty big social media presence. And like I said, a podcast and YouTube channel. If you just search Been There, Got Out, you can find us that way. Our website is beentheregotout.com. We do a free discovery call, which is a Zoom meeting with my
Mhm.
partner and I, where we'll talk to you for half an hour and figure out if and how we can help you moving forward. So just look up Been There, Got Out and you'll find us.
That's amazing. Lovely. Great. So, dear listeners, I'll put the links in the show notes for your easy reference. And with this hope, until next time, just remember that your mind matters, your story matters, and your fight is valid. So, this is your host, Avik, and you have been listening to Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. Stay strong, stay aware, and stay sovereign. So, thank you so much.